China probably quite likes it when America gets entangled in these situations, because you just never know when they're going to finish, whether it's the invasion of Ukraine or Gaza or Iran. China just doesn't want to get involved because it's got limited resources, and actually only in the last 24 hours it's announced a lower GDP growth target for this year. So it wants to kind of concentrate those resources on its own situation, on its own priorities, and it knows that America is a different kind of superpower, and it will let America keep going with that.
So we talk about China because there's a story on the front page about spy claims, but before we get to that, the idea of what would China have made of the West's response to what's happened in the Middle East? Is it a sign of the fracture of the West? Is it a sign of the weakness of the UK? Is it a sign that Donald Trump, when he says he's going to do things, maybe actually does them?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think China's general approach to this kind of foreign operation is to not get entangled. So actually China probably quite likes it when America gets entangled in these situations, because you just never know when they're going to finish, whether it's the invasion of Ukraine or Gaza or Iran. China just doesn't want to get involved because it's got limited resources, and actually only in the last 24 hours it's announced a lower GDP growth target for this year. So it wants to kind of concentrate those resources on its own situation, on its own priorities, and it knows that America is a different kind of superpower, and it will let America keep going with that. As for the UK response, I mean, it's like Rod said, we're not a serious country. We can't kind of roster up a military response within a week,
2 weeks.
And I think you wouldn't be caught dead with China doing anything like that.
Well, so why they spy? Why? I mean, we've got to be careful how we talk about this because it's a live case to involve. But we know that there have been other examples of spying with China. China clearly do spy on the UK in some form and quite aggressively. I think putting aside the case that's currently happening in Westminster on the front of the Times today, making allegations about a Labour MP's husband, we know that China does spy. Why do they bother then if we're not really important?
Well, I think all countries spy. First of all, China will have spies in all countries, and all countries will try to have spies in China as well. Actually, recently in the last year or so, the CIA has put forward these kind of series of Mandarin adverts, advertising for Chinese informants to come forward to the CIA. And so this espionage game, let's not be pearl clutchy about it. We are the nation of James Bond. We know that spies exist. Fine. Why does any country spy? Well, it's good to get that kind of illicit information that you don't get in a diplomatic sphere or in a kind of confrontational sphere. You want to know who thinks what, who has influence where, all this sort of stuff. As I say, people want to know that about the Chinese leadership as well. And it actually, there's an argument that spooks might make that actually they keep the peace. Yeah. By allowing this kind of stuff to be communicated or
no surprises really. Surprises cause wars, and actually
right, exactly. So anyway, but when it comes to the Chinese targeting of the UK, I think the UK is symbolically still very, very important. Economically, it's not so important anymore, especially after Brexit. But symbolically, as this kind of special relationship with the US goes, as a member of the UN Security Council, diplomatically, financially, technologically, symbolically, the UK has a lot of, I think, clout still. And so China still wants the UK to kind of not be its enemy, basically, to at least give it some face. So that's why it cares so much about the UK.
And in that context, Rod, should we be more robust when we think about things like embassies, or is this just the way that the great game's always been played, and people have embassies, people spy on each other, and we can't do that much about it?
I don't think it is, and I think Cindy understates it a little bit as well. If you look at this comes partly from a conversation I had with Mike Pompeo 4 or 5 years ago, shortly after the first Donald Trump administration, which was the extent of Chinese infiltration and spying in the United States was close to being unbelievable. There are, a new counterintelligence case is opened in America every 10 hours, always China-related. 5,000 active cases. Cyber espionage, academic research and theft, political influence, surveillance, economic espionage, all that stuff. And I'm sure countries do spy. I'm sure we do not spy with anything like the alacrity and competence of the Chinese. And it's undoubtedly happening here. And that's why we had all those to and fro arguments during the teens, the 20 teens, about whether we should allow China to have control over, our nuclear plants. such as the one in near Bristol. So yes, we have to be far, far, far more, as the defence chiefs and the intelligence chiefs have said, proactive on the cyber espionage front, and a bit more realistic. China is not our friend. There's a good case for saying China is nobody's friend. I mean, it doesn't treat its allies with great respect. I mean, Iran is a kind of ally, and it takes no notice of Iran's problems whatsoever, fortunately. So, yeah, we do have to be far more proactive.
Sydney, Rod, stay where you are. We're just gonna keep an eye on the news that's happening in the region of the Middle East, because there's always things moving. We'll bring you that as soon as we can confirm stories that are happening. We're going to talk about marriage roles, which is big talk, and then we're going to talk about small talk, if we can. This is Times Radio Breakfast with Kate McCann and Stig Abell in association with Nationwide. A good way to back.
We spoke earlier to the former Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard, who told us about a major study that found young men are more likely now than older men to have traditional views about marriage and to disagree with gender equality. Rod, what do you reckon's going on here?
To me, what?
Why not?
I think isn't it wonderful that the world's beginning to regain a little sanity? Well done, Gen Z. I think it's remarkably good. I think it's interesting. I don't quite trust these surveys. They always seem to confuse causality with
Correlation.
With correlation, yeah, I'm never quite certain about them. I have seen a change in the difference between Gen Z and certainly Gen X, and probably the millennials. There is a certain resistance to what I think Gillard pointed out was this notion of toxic masculinity and so on. Of course, if you're going to hammer in the point about toxic masculinity, it's going to have a kickback at some point in time, and I think that's probably what you're seeing now.
So, are you? I mean, do you? I can't decide whether you're joking, Rod, or whether you're serious there, where you're saying, "Thank goodness for some sanity."
I was joking.
Okay, good. Because Kate, one of our listeners, has asked for some clarity. So it's good that we've got that there for you, Kate. Cindy, what do you make of this?
Well, I'm inclined to agree with Rod in terms of, how trustworthy are these polls. I'm really hoping that actually, it depends on how you ask the question. If the question was, do you think the husband or the wife should, and you're given no other choice other than a gendered lens on it. I think some things, like, some things my partner probably should have the final say on, but not because he's a man, but because he probably knows more about, insurance than I do. Do you know what I mean? So I wonder how the questions are asked, and also I wonder which countries this poll has been done in, because it is a global poll.
Yeah, it's a range of different countries.
And of course they compare it generationally to the boomer generation, which is good. But I think, let's not kid ourselves that actually in the West, gender equality has gone progressed way more than actually in most of the rest of the world. If you ask most people in China, probably they would say actually the man should have the final say on certain things. So we have to bear that cultural differences in mind as well. So I'm skeptical of the poll, but if we are to take it at face value, then I'm quite concerned, really. Actually,
I think there is a rise in concern. I think Andrew Tate plays on this. There was a rise in concern. Backlashes always create backlashes, which create backlashes, and I think that's what's happened here. That there's been a rise of, as everyone said, this sort of blaming of men for toxic masculinity. I think that probably has given cause to people like Andrew Tate who want to bang the drum for men's rights in a way that's quite attractive to young people. That's probably what's happened here, Rod. That there's a sort of men are worried about being feminized, and therefore they've started banging the drum again.
I think that's right, and it's also the case that the boomers were unique in this, in that the boomers, I remember, went through the first wave and then the second wave of feminism, which and enormous amounts of legislation and changes in how we worked, in the demography and so on, with women entering the workforce in huge numbers after the Equal Pay Act, the reform of the divorce laws and so on. All of that revolution took place whilst the boomers were kind of growing up, and so I think the boomers are accustomed, as I am, to an idea of absolute equality of opportunity for men and women. Where it becomes more problematic is is the latter third wave of feminist argument, which seemed to be that men oppress women. Men and women are absolutely equal, or should be equal. Women are better than men. And you heard those three contradictory arguments made during that third wave of feminism simultaneously by the same people. And obviously it doesn't add up. I mean, there is something wrong there. And so I think some of the contradictions which came in the later wave of feminism are now beginning to maybe work their way out a little bit. Transgenderism was another one where the theory and the practice suddenly came into very harsh conflict.
Cindy, would you recommend starting a conversation on this topic as an icebreaker? So then, what do you think about male-female relations and
gender equality?
Gender equality in the new generation.
No, I wouldn't. I really like that article, but I also thought some of the other examples it gave as small talk was not very small talk at all. Things like, how did you end up in this line of work? I don't think I'd ask someone on the bus that question.
So what's your small talk? Do you have are you good at small talk?
No, I'm actually trying to be better, because I've realised in the last few months that actually I've, exactly as this article Helen Rumbelow, who has talked to this author about small talk, said, actually that small talk makes people happier, it builds community links, all this sort of stuff, this weak ties, which is not meaningful in the same way as kind of your friends or family, but are still really, really important. So I realised in the last few months I don't do that enough, probably because of our digital age. So I've been trying to do that more, but my go-to is to just ask someone, how are you? If you're at the shop or with a postman or something like that, how are you? And then you kind of go in from there. But actually, apparently that's not good, because they will just say good and shut you down. But I actually think anything else is a bit too invasive.
Well, she suggested, what are you doing?
Yeah,
but
not in an accusatory manner.
What are you doing?
You just have to get the tone right on that one, I think. Rod, what do you reckon?
I think it's the most important question you've raised this morning, to be honest. I think it's. I genuinely do. I think it's a picture of our society which isn't a happy one. It's a society characterised by anomie and alienation, largely, and it's because so many things which we relied upon to tie our communities together have disappeared in the last 40 to 50 years. We are far less communitarian than we were. I forget the numbers now, but most people don't even know who their neighbour is one of the, and also we buy houses and move around the country. We're far more transient. We don't set down roots, and so we tend not to even have a casual acquaintance with people. It's very worrying, and all of the things that we do these days for leisure, instead of the things we used to do, whether it would be the church, which was very important in the 60s, whether it be the pub, which has been very important up until now, has been replaced by really solipsistic stuff such as going to the gym and shopping. It's a massive change.
So, what would you lead with that in a conversation with a stranger, Rob?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd harangue them. I'd follow them down the street, haranguing them about it. Yeah.
Come back! I want to make a point about solipsism.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it's certainly a way to start, Rod. Thank you very much, Cindy Yu, Rod Liddle. Great to have you both with us today to talk through the stories of the day. And you can get even more Rod Liddle on Saturdays at 10 a.m. on Times Radio.